So today we're diving into one of the most important aspects of reaching our goal, which is scheduling. Believe it or not, scheduling 3,400 birds in a single year takes a lot of planning. And to give you an idea on how much planning it does take, we're going to break it down step by step today. So let's go. All right guys, so behind me is our giant calendar for the year of 2025. So this enables us to be able to see everything every day for each of the months through this year's season. And this is where we schedule everything for our meat chickens. So it gives us a really clear picture on when everything is coming in and when everything is going to go off to get processed. So for those of you watching that don't really know too much about raising meat chickens will spend roughly about 8 weeks on our farm before processing. So that means we're working on a pretty tight schedule where every 2 months we raise, pasture and process a new flock. The first 3 weeks of the chick's life they're going to spend in here in our brooding house, where they're warm and safe, where they grow strong enough until they're ready to move outside to pasture. Once they're ready, they'll head out to these pastures right here, where they'll spend the next 5 weeks rotating across fresh grass every day. Now let's talk numbers. To hit 3,400 birds, our farm is planning on doing 2 separate groups, which is going to be the USDA group and the self-processing group. For the USDA group, we're roughly doing about 415 birds per batch, and over 8 weeks over the year that equals to about 7 batches per bird, giving us roughly about 2,905 birds, I think. And for the self-processing group, we're looking at doing about 100 birds per batch, and we're doing a total of 5 groups. So that equals about 3,400 birds, just over 3,400 birds for the 2025 season. Now this is where the fun begins. How on earth do we schedule 2 different groups over the 2025 season? Well, let me show you. All right guys, so I decided to switch over to a paper copy of the calendar because the big calendar that I was just on wasn't giving the best image. So I'm going to show you on this calendar right here, and it will give you a much better idea on how we are scheduling all of these birds in 2025. As I mentioned earlier, we're doing 2 groups, which is USDA and self-processing, which is done on our farm. So the USDA is coming in, as I said, batches of 415, and the first group is going to arrive on February 12th. And then following the week after, the self-processing group comes February 19th. And if you remember, these birds are going to spend 3 weeks in these brooding houses of ours, which will take them to March 19th and March 26th. So these 2 dates are when the birds go out to pasture. And this is also when the fun really begins, because when these birds leave the brooding house on these dates for pasture, the next group arrive on these dates. So USDA batch 2 will arrive the 19th and self-processing batch 2 will arrive the 26th. Now they'll spend the next 5 weeks out on pasture, which means that the USDA batch number 1 will be processed April 9th and the self-processing will be done April 16th. Now if you're keeping up with everything, what this then means is once these birds go out to the processing, these birds right here, batch number 2, will then go on to pasture. So that means they've spent 3 weeks until this date, and then they've spent 8 weeks of life, so they go get processed on those days. So what you're seeing here is me marking the rest of the dates for the 2025 season for both USDA and self-processing, and now with the blue circles it shows when the birds are arriving for the USDA and the self-processing. All right, so I had to take my hat off because it is extremely warm in here right now. But yeah, so that should give you a good idea on how we are planning on scheduling our birds for 2025. Now, sometimes the birds are not exactly 5 weeks apart. Sometimes they might be 4.5 or 5.5 weeks. It really just depends on what the USDA processors can get us in. For example, I wanted to get June 18th, but the only time they could give me was June 16th. So sometimes you are at the mercy of the USDA, but you just got to do what you got to do. But with that being said, let's head on back to the big calendar. So as you just saw, the tricky part is timing everything perfectly. For each batch, we need to make sure we've got chicks arriving, brooder space ready, our pasture rotation planned, all prepared, and processing dates ready to go. It's like putting together a giant puzzle. And not only that, we've also got to make sure we're selling the product so we have enough freezer space. But we'll touch more on that later on in this series. As you can see, raising 3,400 birds, there's not a whole lot of room for guesswork. But it's not only important for us to have this scheduled out properly, it's also important for the animals' well-being and welfare. Too many birds at once is going to cause overcrowding, which can possibly lead to diseases and overgrazing our pastures. It can also mean there's a lot more aggression in the birds simply because they're fighting a lot more for resources like feed and water. But at the end of the day, this isn't just about numbers. It's about making sure every bird we raise has the best life possible and every customer gets the product they can trust, keeping the birds, the land, and our customers happy. So pretty much a tight schedule keeps everything in balance. So that is just a quick look on how we are planning and scheduling 3,400 birds for this 2025 season. As you saw, it's a big challenge, but I think we're ready to take it on. And as I mentioned earlier, the first batch of chicks are only coming in a couple weeks, so we definitely have to start getting everything ready. It means over the next few episodes, we'll start diving into other factors like our chicks arriving, how we prepare our brooding houses, what coops we use, our pasture management plan, all those lovely things. I want to say thank you so much for watching, and please like and subscribe this video, and we look forward to you following along on our next episode.